Thank you. I'm actually going to break a 10 rule because I have to. So there you go. The drive to create a machine that replicates the human mind, that replicates the human body, has ancient roots. It has its roots in mythology and in literature that are far older than our ability with science, technology, and engineering to actually build these machines. But here we are, it's 2013, and almost daily, the headlines in the news bring us these machines, robots. They're replicating, enhancing, and automating many parts of our lives, many parts of our world. There are robots on the factory floor. There are robot game show contestants, robots that offer medical advice, robots that perform surgery, robots that play heavy metal music, lunar robots, robots on Mars, robot cheetahs. There are robot cockroaches, robot lawyers, robot sparrows, robot spies. There are robots in the classroom, robots to defend us and watch us and teach us and attack things. And oh my God, there are drones. There are also robots that can debone chickens. This is actually an innovation that has really sort of stuck in my mind for some strange, obsessive reason. I confess, and it's actually quite a remarkable achievement. As you can read in the sub-headline, it's actually taken engineers quite some time to be able to come up with a way to debone chickens programmatically, since chickens, even factory farm chickens, are unique. They're all a little bit different. And the challenge to be able to make a machine that can account for all of these differences is apparently a headline-worthy achievement. Of course, once you standardize, once you butcher and debone a chicken, it does standardize the meat quite nicely. Now, of course, it's kind of a conceptual stretch, I admit, to go from standardization and chicken deboning robots to teaching and learning and technology. So, but it's a TED Talk, so we'll just pretend like that makes sense, right? But the link really is that if we come to this point where we can develop technology that can account for all of the differences in a chicken's bone structure, if we can build technology that can beat Ken Jennings at Jeopardy, can we build robots that recognize other differences in humans? Perhaps cognitive differences, perhaps intellectual capabilities. In other words, can we build robots that teach humans how to learn? Is that possible? What would that entail? Does that entail more standardization? Does that entail gathering more data? Does that entail more testing? And here's the important question, I think. Do we want to do this? Even if we can build robots and instructional tools this way, is this a good idea? Okay, so this is a completely gratuitous chicken deboning robot image, and I apologize in advance, but I think it gets the point across quite nicely, right? There might be cause for concern with building robots that perform certain tasks, right? I look at this image and I think, why the hell are we teaching robots to have precise knife-wielding skills? I've read enough science fiction to know that this is actually sort of a dangerous notion, right? And actually, our fears about automatons are pretty much as old as our drive to build them. Interestingly, the word robot is quite new, and it was actually coined not in the engineering lab, but in theater. The word is from 1920. Carol Chapek wrote a play called Rossum's Universal Robots. He credited his brother with creating the word robot, but robota in Czech means forced labor. And in the play, Rossum's Universal Robots, the robots take over the factory, and then they take over the world, and then humans go extinct. And I think that this is a sort of legacy that we've seen in science fiction as well. Frankenstein's monster wants to destroy his creator, and robots, literary robots, want to overthrow their masters. There is, of course, another legacy that we can talk about when it comes to robots. And anyone who's read science fiction will say, of course we can build robot chicken deboners, right? Because we have the 3 laws of robotics, which prevent robots from doing harm. Refresher, a little science fiction refresher for you. Rule number 1, a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being come to harm. Rule number 2, a robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. Rule number 3, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first and second laws. And this is the lesser-known 0th law. A robot may not harm humanity or by inaction allow humanity to come to harm. In other words, in Asimov's framework, robots are not a concern. Robots will not harm us, they're here to help us. Of course, not all robots got the message. Not all robots follow the 3 laws of robotics. And let's be clear too, the 3 laws of robotics do not resolve all of the ethical issues that there are with robots. They just say that there will be less knife-wielding robot rebels. Really, that's all. Of course, not all robots are as threatening as the knife-wielding chicken robot deboner, but particularly in education. But there are plenty of robots increasingly in our classrooms. They are adaptive learning systems. They are intelligent tutoring systems. They are automated assessment tools. But we have, in education, authored no 3 laws of EdTech robotics in response. We don't really ask a lot of questions about the ethical implications of the tools that we are adopting. Mostly we ask, will these technologies raise test scores? We don't ask, will they harm humanity? I invoke science fiction here for a number of reasons. Partially because I think science fiction helps us tease out some of these ideas, some of these questions about the way in which our culture and science interact. And of course, researchers and scientists and technology engineers and technology entrepreneurs and science fiction authors share many of the same metaphors and models when we talk about technology and when we talk about these things. We are all bound by our culture, whether we're engineers or scientists, or whether we do imagine of things like write television shows. And finally, I think that this is particularly important. There tends to be a sense, and a very incorrect sense, I think, in both education technology and in science fiction of how the human mind works. There's this notion that education is a content delivery system, right? And this appears all the time in the products that I see in education technology, as well as in science. Of course, the great moment, one of my favorite moments in movies is when the world's greatest living actor, Keanu Reeves, has that profound realization when the knowledge is injected directly into his brain that, whoa, he knows Kung Fu. And of course, this is in science as well. B.F. Skinner, the behaviorist B.F. Skinner, also created a teaching machine that operated the same way, this notion of programmed instruction, that we can create machines that teach us. And again, this appears in novels like Ender's Game. And even in the latest craze, the MOOCs, the massive open online courses, again, we see this a very similar notion. It is interesting to me that the MOOCs have come from artificial intelligence labs. Coursera and Udacity come from Stanford's Artificial Intelligence Lab, and edX has its origins in MIT's Artificial Intelligence Lab. So they are doing content delivery and automated assessment together. This automation of teaching and learning has been a long-standing goal of artificial intelligence, and it's been a long-standing plot line in science fiction as well. This notion that we can somehow create a machine that will automate teaching, that will will automate learning, and then magically somehow that makes it personalized for all of us. Most of these are quite crude. But last year, the Hewlett Foundation gave a $100,000 bounty for someone to come up with a way to automate not multiple choice grading, because we've been automating that for about 100 years now, but to automate the grading of essays. And according to the Hewlett Foundation, it was a success. They gave a bounty, and researchers said that sure enough, robots can grade essays as well as humans. Of course, all the investors and the big testing companies and all of those robots that have PhDs in English that are unemployed were thrilled with the news. Robots grade more efficiently, right? Robots, unlike those pesky English teachers, do not demand a living wage, they are not unionized, they do not want health care benefits, but they are efficient. A robot essay grader, so I've heard, can grade 16,000 SAT essays in 20 seconds. So that means if a teacher doesn't have to read your work, they can assign more of it. They can have many more students in their class, hundreds of thousands of more students in their classes. And I think it's important to recognize not everyone thinks, of course, this is a good idea. Not just those of us that actually, earn our living reading students' papers. And there's this notion that, of course, that the software is actually not as good as people say. And that really, computers don't read essays the same way that humans do. They look at things like word frequency, they look at word placement, sentence length, the use of punctuation and conjunctions. It's a very different sort of analysis, textual analysis. And I think as one said, if computers can read as well as humans, it's actually because we've taught humans to read like computers. Indeed, many of the testing companies that do this, that purportedly robots grade as well as, they are given very strict rubrics to follow. And when you give a computer a strict rubric to follow, of course, it does so with more precision and more efficiency. These human essay graders are told not to recognize creative expression, but a robot doesn't even know what creative expression looks like. I think that robots raise all sorts of questions about thinking machines and thinking humans, about the purpose of writing assignments, the purpose of education. And I have to ask, do robot graders violate the law of robotics? The promise of the proponents of these technologies, from adaptive learning companies and AI professors and MOOC startups, is this is going to make education more efficient. It is going to make it scalable, standardized. I find that actually quite chilling. The French philosopher Jacques Ellul argued in the 1960s, actually around the same time as Asimov's I, Robot, Anna B. Skinner's Teaching Machine, that this drive towards efficiency was the primary drive of our technological age. He said the human brain must be made to conform to the much more advanced brain of the machine. And education will no longer be an unpredictable and exciting adventure in human enlightenment, but an exercise in conformity and an apprenticeship to whatever gadgetry is useful in a technical world. What use will the technical world have for us? What use will it have for our students? And I think this is why I like the laws of robotics very much indeed, particularly this last one, when it brings up this question of humanity, right? This isn't about saving the human race and robots versus humans. This is about our humanity. And our humanity is deeply tied with learning, and it's deeply tied with love, and not with algorithms. And I think it's important not to devise the laws of edtech robotics, but to ask these questions, ask these difficult ethical questions about what we're building and why. Because if we don't have a strong vision for what the future of teaching and learning looks like, you can bet that there are other folks